Dow drops 300 points as sources tell CNBC Trump Xi meeting unlikely before D3adline. Stocks fell sharply on Thursday after CNBC reported that a meeting between President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping is unlikely before a key March deadline. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 373 points, while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite both fell more than 1.5%. The major averages. CNBC learned through a source that a meeting between the two leaders was China and the U.S. Earlier on Thursday, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said China and the U.S. were still far away on striking a trade deal. Kudlow told Fox the shares of Caterpillar and Deere fell 2% and 1.8%, respectively. Boeing also dropped. The market was already on edge as worries about the global economy were rekindled. The European Commission that growth outlook sparked worries that the global economy could be slowing down. Similar fears the Bank of England also cut its 2019 outlook and sees the UK economy growing at its slowest pace since 2009. Thursday's decline comes as the corporate earnings season continues. Twitter reported, companies are reporting solid earnings growth for the fourth quarter with profits showing an increase of 14.1% on a year-over-year basis, according to FactSet. However, the S&P 500 snapped a 5-day winning streak on Wednesday following the release of mixed quarterly results. The broad index shares of BBT and SunTrust banks bucked the overall negative trend, gaining 2.7% and 8.6%, respectively. The two stocks rose. The SPDR Regional Banking ETF KRE rose 1.4%, on track for its biggest one-day gain since January 18. Share this video. Got a confidential news tip? We want to hear from. Sign up for free newsletters and get more CNBC delivered to your inbox. Get this delivered to your inbox, and more info about our products and services. Copyright 2019 CNBC LLC. All rights reserved. Data is a real-time snapshot. Data is delayed at least 15 minutes. Global business and data also provided by your browser is not supported. The requested video is unable to play. The video does not exist in the system. We're not able to play this video if an ad blocker is enabled. Please disable your ad blocker on CNBC and reload the page to start the video.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.